Hey, how are you? Hopefully you're doing well. I'm gonna continue reading. Today's been a lot, but it's Taco Tuesday, and I need to talk. Oh, so I'm gonna keep reading through Orion's Belts. I'm here with my sweet savage. Last last week we stopped at soaking damage, which is basically talking about how to defend yourself. Or not defend yourself, but like the different ways of surviving. Ideally, like, the best way to survive getting shot at is to not get hit. But we'll pick up where we left off, give it about an hour, and see where that takes us. How to hurt things and steal stuff. Your relative velocity to a target determines how accurate your weapons are. There's a bunch of complicated and arcane math involved on the back end that determines a hit from a miss. Heuristics help. Sitting ducks get slapped more easily than birds on the wing. Gnats are harder to slap than asses, but the resulting kick is easier to cope with than for the former. Stay moving. Stay small. Stay moving even in bigger craft. Movement is life. Stay small even in bigger craft, at least from the perspective of the bad guys. Okay, now try to make the other guys do the opposite. Modules that slow down targets or make them seem bigger than they are help put the hurt on them. Neat. Even with such devices, it's impossible to get a horde of enemies to sit still. The rate of fire for your weapons can help. There is no kill like overkill. But it's best to share where possible. When you hit that focus fire button, it shoots everything you have at whatever you're pointing at. Sorry, I'm gonna wiggle. Oh, is this okay? Yeah. Oh. When you hit that focus fire button, it shoots everything you have at whatever you're pointing at. If it's an easy target to hit, no worries. Stacking all of your damage up front in an attempt to delete the target is called an alpha strike. Settle down, Street Fighter. No moment 37 shenanigans with these alphas. Okay, but what if you miss? When batteries are joined, or fired at the same time, they use the same positional data to calculate balls and strikes. If you attempt to blap a moving target and they're at peak dodge, all those eggs in that one basket of yours are liable to be rotten. Then comes the tackle, then come the tears. Fear not, just spread out the shots. The apogee of an orbit has the least relative velocity. The perigee has the opposite situation. When an orbit takes the satellite in line with the traveling body it orbits, that detracts from the velocity. When the satellite moves in the opposite direction, it adds. These points in space vary moment by moment. See, fancy math. Fuck up. Let's say that a quarter of every orbit has a more favorable shot than the other 3/4, but you're too busy maneuvering and trying to survive to wait for the prime moment. If you stagger your volleys as widely as possible, your odds of hitting that magic moment and murdering mad marauders multiplies. Your best sustained damage comes with the widest staggered fire possible. That means the most even amount of time between shots gives the best spread of possibility space. Your best burst comes from firing everything at the perfect moment. There are swaths of potential between those two poles. It's harder to get under the guns of an enemy that spreads the hate around. For buggering in bigger bot-busting boats, I like to group my weapons into 2 or 3 groups, just long press the module and drag it over to its buddy to bind them. The twin barrels method of timing my shots allows me to stagger them about 50-50. Then, I get to pretend that whatever I fly is a rifter. Satisfaction ensues. Not all weapons deliver percussive maintenance near instantaneously. Missiles and drones like to draw out the experience. As such, they are my preferred implements of warfare, ladies. Missiles are happy little packages of hurt that must travel from point A to point boom. It takes them a bit. This is called hang time. The delay in gratification might seem insignificant at first. Don't fall for it. If you play with it, It might make you happy. Hang time allows for parting shots, as your missiles will go forth even if you're already warping or stealthing away. If you're fleeing a chasing target, you can kick missiles out the back so that the aggressor runs into them like mines, a few kilometers beyond your usual range. This situation is very easy to prompt in bots. You can make lunges and pull away to create similar stretching. Drones function more like damage over time from other games. Each style of drone has a particular damage type on offer, allowing them to specialize more effectively than any other weapon. However, they don't hurt as hard or as fast. Drones can be picked off by an accurate enough player. Thankfully, pirates don't much care to save themselves by shooting the little blighters out of the sky. Yet. Most drone boats can do drive-by attacks that latch some of their squadron onto the target to keep shooting even if the mothership moves out of range. Speaking of, that control range is usually pretty cheap to get to silly levels. Having a mining boat send little friends 40 kilometers through dead space means a lot more when you cannot jump away. For the purposes of killing pirates, each weapon has its time and place to shine. Turrets hit hardest, but are position dependent. Special weapons are more generally safe, but are slower. As for taking stuff from the dead, remember the snatch and grab maneuver from earlier for longer ranged builds. If you're already zippering around under the guns for fun, gathering the goods as you pass is a nice bit of side work. Be warned though, looting causes a ship to approach. If the object it is approaching ceases to be, the ship will stop. A stop ship is a sitting duck. Do this often enough and you may find yourself doing a pretty mean wreck impression yourself. It is far safer to attempt to orbit a wreck or zip past and loot it that way to keep momentum than it is to rely on auto approach. It is safer still to swoop and scoop, but safe isn't always fun. Kill them all, scrap their weapons of war, or turn them into your own. Most importantly, as we always say, don't get eliminated. Maneuvers. Don't have no ceiling. Wake up, take off that dress, it's too revealing. Brain by Diplo X Artemis. Artemis spelled Artemas. Whoa, good stuff. I love that song. Most of these are notable for the small ship aficionado. Let's reiterate the basics before moving into more advanced plays. Big ships care about positioning, but are mostly too slow to wiggle effectively. Cruisers can benefit from these maneuvers, but are more generally prone to face tanking. Still, defense in depth is the difference between death and making it to plan D as in Delta. Always warp in at 100 kilometers if able. It's faster to turn and burn the 50 kilometers or so away from origin before deciding to engage or not than it is to land on the enemy's face and have that decision made for you. Keep going to about 250 plus off of origin to establish a safe bookmark, but prefer other signals as reset points. Once you commit to a maneuver, considering your next moves as you perform, try to stay 2 or 3 moves ahead of where you are in the fight. If you're analyzing as you go, you are behind the spacecraft. Analyze when it is safe. The debrief happens after the fight, not before. Debrief before action on your own time. Leashing and aggro. The first wave of most anomalies follows the same playbook. There are usually 4 ships. The highest bounty is usually the enemy healer. It and the enemy tank tend to hang back. The primary damage dealers, 1 close, 1 ranged, move forward and attempt to put holes in the closest player to them. That player is said to have aggro. Any tips including the word aggro from other games may safely apply within EVE Echoes. So say you like using aggro to manipulate minion waves in League of Legends or Wild Rift. Those tactics are applicable. Do you enjoy playing a tank in other role-playing games? Stand between your friends and their ends. That said, leashing for yourself and others is invaluable. If you can use the artificial hatred of the rats to lure them away from the pack for a little heart-to-heart, you will find yourself able to have more hearts for dinner. The ability to leash a line of battle into separate gaggles is the easiest way to take down elites. Even the tankiest meatball needs a breather every now and then. The easiest way to lead a crowd apart is to set an orbit at 100 kilometers off of the ANOM's signal. The fastest crafts will curve after, while the slower Sistren spiral out towards the object of their ire. Fight them as they come, or get creative. You can always warp to the far side of a fight to catch fast craft out of position, if you would rather deal with the laggard healers first. If you have multiple folks on your side, this can be extremely helpful in tackling the tacklers, so your friends can feast unmolested. Safe engagement and egress. When approaching a main body of pirates, don't just hit the approach button and hope. Going straight at a bad guy with a gun only works if you have plot armor. You might, but ships do not, and their losses are notable sources of character growth, much like dogs, goldfish, and lovers. Tragedy is best experienced second hand. It is generally advisable to come in at a 45-degree angle. If you're feeling frisky, narrow the approach vector. If you're feeling skittish, widen it, or think about where you'd like to jump away to. Done over a period of time, this creates a narrowing orbit, meant to get in under the enemy's guns. For the artists out there, first, thank you for your service. Second, it should resemble something like the golden ratio. A wide berth, but getting tighter, will allow you to get in close on a surprising number of big, but slow, bruisers. It can also get you killed if you don't take a glancing blow to heart and bug out or cut in close between blasts. This is the dance. You will stumble as you learn. Always have a backup plan, B. To get out safely, expand the spiral. Better yet, jump. Similar styles of closing and opening space to targets apply in duels, assuming each side is relatively evenly matched. They almost never are, but it's nice to imagine. To buy distance in a slower craft and use their speed against them, fly towards their trail, away from where they're headed. If you have too much smash, this can bring you into a chasing pattern, but if the time is right, you can whip out and widen the gap. This technique can save your life if you're tanky enough. If the aggressors are built to chase more than stick, you can break points with luck and enough beef to survive. It is possible to use space judo to survive against players who rely strictly on the orbit command, like the NPCs. No dragon chant needed. However, with enough speed and agility on the other side, there is no escape. To get in close, aim where they will be. Keep it up to use their velocity against them. To get away, aim where they won't be. The most obvious option is where they were. That's going to be a changing orientation as they try to either maintain their orbit or get in closer. Sometimes, where there won't be is going to be ahead of their present location, especially if they have more smash than maneuverability. Flying is hard. If you must do it, remember to make sound effects to lighten the mood. Spreading the love. At the beginning of the fight, the best paying strategy is to try and get as many bad guys to die around the same time as possible. This takes observation to get down. Don't expect perfection. The 20 minutes per tick starts with the first target's death, so tickling as many as you can before pulling the plug on their healer, ideally, sets up the next wave for success. Like with mining, overkill is wasted damage. Missile lovers know this more than most, as the delay between damming the torpedoes and damming the enemy can sometimes leave payloads all dressed up with nothing to kill. It's tragic, really. If you feel comfortable enough that your survival isn't in doubt, stagger your volleys, and assign a weapon to each target you can reach in turn. pay attention to which target the healer decides needs the support most. It takes them a second to swap targets. When done right, it will feel a bit like juggling. The tendency to ramp tension can make familiar fights seem new and fresh. This is super useful in maximizing the gains from lower level anomalies. Better to one-shot 4 than to 4-shot 1, yeah? Drive-by shooting. Getting in the enemy's face isn't always the best option. When webs or scrams can mean a swift death, being able to rush down a target's life without getting too close can stretch a ship's capabilities well beyond expectations. Instead of orbiting, sometimes the safest play to take a slice of the target's sphere of influence while applying harm. Instead of orbiting, sometimes the safest play is to take a slice of the target's sphere of influence while applying harm directly to their nasal region. I call this technique drive-by shooting, and primarily use it against threatening clusters, or slower tackles. Basically, if tangoing to entanglement tightens tension into temptation, take your time, taunt the Trons, and, 10 toes down, tickle them into attitudes of the tits up variety. Whip out wide and come in close and parallel. If you are at the edge of your effective range, then you have the spacing down. You and the target of this maneuver are now in a slugfest, knockout, brawl. Their friends are ideally still trying to catch up to engage. If you change your speed to match theirs, you will effectively be standing still for them, but moving relative to every other enemy on the field. This is as close to 2 privateers and broadsides as is possible. If your ranges are near equivalent, you can choose the pace of the fight. Turn in to add intensity. Turn away if you want to disengage. Let your capacitors suggest how much of that dog you got in you. Crossing the T is a useful heuristic for the ideal point of asymmetrical advantage. If your flight path represents the shelf atop the letter T relative theirs, then you have the best defense to offense ratio, all else being equal. If you can hit them while speeding by at maximum relative velocity, then by all means, run and gun. However, if you can shoot down the enemy's throat or up their kilt, you have attained a positional advantage. The set of options between these two poles does not follow a normal curve. The other guy gets a vote, even if they're a robot. It's a complicated dance. Try to incorporate the missteps and just have fun. If you ain't flirting with danger, how tight is the margin of risk to reward looking for you? The ideal path over time is one that maximizes rewards while minimizing risk. This is different depending on your budget. As an alpha, you can stockpile steps along the journey to go back through. Still, consistently hitting ticks ain't too tough. Frigates don't care much about P's and Q's when they're crossing I's and dotting T's. Wait, scratch that, reverse it. Destroyers care more about positioning and timing, as they have neither size nor defenses on their side. They're peak Moneyball in terms of risk versus reward, but require tender, loving care to get the most out of them. Cruisers have the easiest time hitting consistent returns and are most consistent overall, but are most vulnerable to PvP assaults and don't replace every investment in their well-being nearly as quickly as their smaller relatives. Battle cruisers are to cruisers what destroyers are to frigates. Pushing boundaries with them is risky as hell. It's the top end for an alpha. Hunters want them above all other targets. Good luck. Last point on how to maintain the posture of your dreams, ladies. Special weapons don't care, but they have hang and loiter effects, so there. Special weapons ships have the benefit of flying defensively, as they dish damage. Assault craft, for example, are built to rush in and tackle the enemy. They have brief umbrellas of heightened defenses to hide behind before getting under the enemy's guns becomes a life or death affair. Their rushdown approach to damage is a secondary thought in their design. Try building a sniper with the same goal to see what I mean here. The consistency of application makes the rushdown rush harder, but survivability suffers as a result. All of that to say this. Honor Harrington loves missiles, and so do I. Jousting. Stabbers love thrusting. It's in the name. Slashers are drive-by specialists. Thrashers can't make up their minds. There are similar hints at design goals in the names of other ships, dat Condor do, but none are so blunt as the main Mini 3. For the curious, a Talwar is a curved sword. Slash and splash or go for the throat. It's the most refined of the three, despite looking like a Kabuto moth hybrid. Bugger the bug, let's talk about how to joust. Ever see A Knight's Tale? If not, go watch it. I'll wait. Now that you've seen it, you know that jousting is epic. Imagine how much more badass it can get when guns are involved. Also, throw guns into the audience. That's the sort of scenario that occurs when you take a dive through the bad guys. Like a drive-by, the goal of jousting is to use speed to get through a dangerous spot while applying damage. I like to stagger damage to play the odds, but if you want to alpha strike, the ideal spots are at the top end of your effective range, both approaching and departing. The worst place to attempt a one-shot is the closest point in your pass, where the relative velocity is at its peak. Unlike a drive-by, there is more time pointed at and away from the enemy than there is safely buzzing past, so make sure the bad guys you're pointing at is comparatively weaker than its friends. Jousting is especially effective for picking out supports and tanks. Think of it like the other guy is using a spaghetti noodle compared to your lance of light and truth. Time your dive to take place immediately after any big guns miss you. If you dive under the guns the next time they fire, all the better. If they tag you on the way out, you can reset and revise your strategy. This part is essential. Make sure to say either wee or zoom as you pass. Homegrown sound effects make almost everything better. When to approach. When you align directly at the enemy, you are presenting the best target possible for them. You'll close distance more quickly than with any other attitude. However, assuming they aren't whipping around all higgledy-piggledy, they will shoot you in the face. If you can catch the bullet in your teeth and live to tell, cool beans. If your gorilla's soft as gold, that might not be the best strategy for your long-term survival. Either way, hitting the approach button with a goal of 0 is an attempt at a dropkick. If the kayfabe is with you, all the better. You will dish as much frag as possible, but are opening yourself up to any your objective has to offer. Attempting such a hug on a teddy bear, like a civilian ship or frigate, is generally acceptable. Doing the same against chainsaws, sharks, or swarms of mosquitoes will get you laughed at during cleanup. I won't see the carnage, but I will be laughing with the knowledge. This joy is the key to my youth, and you may share in it when you're able to first laugh at yourself, as I do. There are times where an enemy's slow gives you that all-in broadsides vibe. If you approach them and they catch you before you reach their face, you get to imitate my cat. They might be holding you at arm's length, but if your harms have claws at the end, and theirs don't, the ouch goes favorably. Go for the eyes, boo! If you set an approach vector with a destination farther away from the target than where you are, you will start running away. Presenting your back like this ain't nearly as bad an idea on paper. At least I believe that's what the next page says. Nope. Presenting your back like this ain't nearly a bad idea on the surface, as your turrets can keep shooting as you keep scooting. However, you are just as much a sitting duck relative to the target as if you had thrown that puppy in park and opened wide. Approaching a point far away from the target is great for baiting. It's the fastest avenue of retreat available, but vulnerable. If you don't mind getting your tail peppered and need to reposition, running away might be the answer. The frenzied pace of the mind inside the cell. The approach button's secret sweet spot creates a maneuver I like to call shadow stabbing. It's like telling your ship, get close, but not too close. Relationship advice, this is not. If you are farther away from your target than where you want to be, but they are faster than you are, if you are farther away from your target than where you want to be, but they are faster than you and coming in hot, you could turn and burn away from them and patiently await their entry into your no-fun zone. Just set approach at a farther distance and take your shots at them as they close. Alternatively, you could set the approach distance to a point between where you are and where you want to be. This will cause your ship to stab in, realize it's overshot the target distance, and turn to try and meet that objective. It's a feint. Technically, calling this little action a lunge would be more accurate. However, cake is a band. If you can't take a cake reference well, you can eat it too. Shadow stabbing is useful for closing the distance on a greater body without allowing their fast tackle to jump your bones. Shadow stab at their swifties for best results. It's great for luring third-party player killers into wasting their time before you warp off to a safe. It's also great for letting pride come before the fall as their long points pin you down. The coquette curve. Whenever you turn, you lose speed. Bleeding velocity like this is a fine way to lure enemies into range before resuming your original attitude. This is the second secret technique a sound approach command can offer. It's especially deadly for missile users. If you're running away from an enemy using a staggered volley, the missiles will pace themselves as expected, plinking away at the bad guy at a rate commensurate with their closing speed. If you want to scare or burst them down, bleed a bit of speed. You can adjust your thrust by dragging the little button to the upper left of your HUD, but be careful not to turn your engines off completely. Or, you could double tap the screen to turn. If you curve into an orbit this way, you can create a rush of damage as they run into more missiles in transit than your steady stream of hate originally produced. Done correctly, the coquette curve creates a kind of tickle 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 slap effect before you return to your regularly scheduled damage output. Pay attention to the effectiveness of your tickling. It can tell you if this is a fight you want to take, or if you should warp off and reevaluate your life choices. Destroyers stand to benefit most from this technique in countering frigates. Orbits and you. Hitting the orbit command will often send you flying in a straight line right at the bad guys. This lines you up for a down-the-throat shot. It is also the fastest way into the action. Choose wisely. Choosing to orbit at the end of a safe approach is a legitimate strategy. At that point, slamming stats against stats is kind of the point. However, it doesn't guarantee safety. Think of setting an orbit as grabbing onto an enemy. Maybe you're trying to hold them at a distance. Perhaps you're attempting to chew their throat out. Either way, you are vulnerable to anyone else around should their AI land them in an opportune position. Miyamoto Musashi did not defeat multiple opponents at once with nothing but an oar by spear tackling the first and hoping for the best. No move should be wasted. No cut should be without purpose or effect. The center is not always within the enemy's body. Cut where you can. Strike where there is value. Check out the Book of Five Rings for further guidance. Don't give me that. It's a short listen. It's like 3 podcasts. Be cagey, like Nicholas. Be ready to strike hard and fast. Use distance and violence to maximize your effectiveness. Oh yeah, and have fun. Orbits make for good duels, but leave you vulnerable to getting third-partied is all. Sometimes, latching on to the biggest bastard in the room like a limpet is just the ticket for keeping your capacitor and, in turn, your defenses alive. In such cases, orbiting around the beefiest battleship on the field and picking off the lessers is best. Other times, Orbiting for a round or two before bugging out just after your dance partner whiffs with their big guns is the best bet. You will get shot in orbit, just not as easily by the enemy you are circling. This is often an acceptable trade-off. If there are many other bad guys, you will get shot a lot. This is more often than not fatal. Extra holes are not generally advisable in most contexts. This is why the box step is safer. It's orbiting, but offset. Plus, box stepping is more fun because it takes effort. Still, sometimes Unga calls for Bunga, and an orbit at 2 feels best. If the time is right for a struggle snuggle, vaya con Dios, amigo. Kill them until they die from it. Incidentally, orbits are the best bet for picking up wreckage. Life lesson: if you chase boxes, be careful of what happens after you catch them. The loot button will cause you to park. If movement keeps you lucid and alive, such tender traps are liable to leave you incognate and dead to the world. Do it. You know you want to. Or, you could orbit at a distance within 10 kilometers, grab the found freebies before resuming your wiggles. Lastly, orbiting around the biggest bad guy on the field can serve a dual purpose. However, you don't need to orbit an enemy. In safer scenarios, the same thing can be done around Flotsam and Jetsam or the anomaly signal itself. I call this posting up. Posting up around a point and shooting out is a bit like an automated box step. If your plane of orbit matches the enemy vector of attack, you'll be vulnerable to their shots half the time. Sometimes this is a worthy trade, if it means camping out under the guns of their big bruiser friend. Sometimes they're too small to be much of a threat anyway. Posting up on points in sequence is a good way to set up ovals and figure eights, but such pretty shapes are often too circumstantially interesting to be practical. Box step revisited. The box step, presented way back towards the beginning, is secretly the combination of a number of smaller component maneuvers. It is meant to hold opponents at range while you settle your differences. Holding space for someone, even if they aren't a real person, can be tough. The goal in performing a box step is to maximize the number of times you cross the T on as many targets as possible, while maintaining a safe distance for applying damage. Remember that when you turn, you lose speed for a second. Turn at the wrong point while box stepping, and you will get shot. Generally, bad guys shoot around the same time, so if you see bullets, lasers, sabos, or cat statues whizzing past you, consider immediate movement after. The little blue arrow of the enemy's vector is the body of the T you want to cross. If you don't see such an arrow in a fight, check your settings to turn on the tactical plot. Crossing the T repeatedly while retreating offers the best incremental offensive and defensive positioning. Box stepping can allow you to do silly things. The Rosy Rowdy Rifter can earn a 500,000 tick, killing the first 2 waves of a small T6 camp. 2 can take it all the way. That's one of the earliest ships received in the game for a Minmatar pilot. The tactics used to achieve that goal are the same for any other frigate. Basically, if you can master the box step, you can participate in any content up to about T9 with most ships. You set the operational difficulty. Burger King is hiring by the doll heads. The easiest and cheesiest method of taking down mobs is to plonk them from well out of range. There are plenty of guides for this method. Long story short, get a long gun and cut lives short. Common advice is to shoot targets from smallest to largest. For long-range fights, this is wise. For the same reasons players in small craft can be dangerous, NPCs can be deadly. They have better application rates and can hold their target entangled for friends to blow down. Getting locked down by little guys does half a player hunter's job for them. The second favored method is to get as tanky as possible, plop down among the baddies, and slap tails. This is risky. They slap back. If you're into that sort of play, by all means. That's what the NPCs are there for. However, human resource specialists, hunters, love to crack the kinds of tough nuts presented by this strategy. Even if they manage to kill any tackle that might pin them down, being close to center is a vulnerability. Rushdown strategies replace all that beef with damage amplifiers. These offer their highest rewards, but demand the highest risks as well. Glass cannons are forever beloved, not because they last long, but because they are so fragile. Mix and match strategies as you so desire. Each can net you around the peak ticks an alpha may attain, although the consistency will vary. The amount of damage you can dish will determine the level of exposure you face. What might be tactically safer is usually operationally more dangerous. The reverse is true. Glass cannons are great at burning through territories without getting grabbed, but a single tackle can tear the tactic to ribbons. The rate of ISK efficiency holds true for weapons and armor as well. There is no need to use the blingiest beasts in your inventory to farm modules when the very modules you farmed could do only slightly less well. The top end for an alpha is found in green modules. Elites drop those. You don't need to drop any ISK at all equipping your fleet should you so desire the challenge. Most hunters will leave anything that isn't blue behind, but a few are thirsty enough that greens get a free ride from them to Jita. Using the cheapest equipment you can to get the job done will increase the challenge and waste the time of any would-be hunters. Play should be a waste of time. Play is leisure. Waste time harder. Play harder. Laugh harder when they realize they spent bullets that cost more than your ship did to produce a kill mark. Talk about a bad pain job. Most MMO players build to not engage with the game. There's nothing wrong with this approach. Using battleships to turn a space sim into cookie clicker is ingenious. Alphas can chase this style too, if they so desire. It's just a solved problem is all. Engaging with the impossible is a way to make the game last forever. Not only can you imagine Sisyphus happy, you can join his gym and exercise your ability to find triumph in strife, pleasure, and even the harshest of conditions. Be a ninja turtle, go slow to go fast, and revel in those snaps of action. The more weight you carry willingly, the higher you will soar when it comes away. War is boring, at least until it isn't. Even against resources that fight back, it's possible to find yourself looking to do something else, but unable. That's addiction in action. If you can find satisfaction in boredom by transmuting it into creativity, literally doing nothing can become the highest pleasure imaginable. With the right attitudinal practice, breathing can become better than any drug. Your ability to spice things up will have more to do with your long-term enjoyment than your efficiency ever will. You control the pace of output in more ways than just your outgoing damage. Pace your incoming damage too. Pace the level of pain and risk you accept. Pace the level of ease and relaxation you allow yourself. Earn the privilege of existence every day by doing the best you can in any way you may. Do that, and your campaigns will be all the wealth you need. The ISK is just a fringe benefit. Anomalous behavior. Basic anomalies come in 3 flavors: small, medium, and large. Think of those sizes as expectations for the size vessel meant to tackle them. That can be safely ignored. The bigger bunches have a chance to drop better industrial equipment in the last wave, but the drop rates are absurdly low outside of T6 plus fights. Killing the whole Anom in less than 20 minutes is the dream, and will net you the whole available bank of bounties in a single tick. Do that to enough anomalies, and you get a bigger tick. Kill enough basic batches of bad guys, and special anomalies will show up. This is the way to get the best loot in the long run, but not the best ISK. Special Anoms offer access to pirate faction wreckage and special stuff mostly meant for Omegas. Teams are recommended for tackling specials if you cannot field overwhelming force. A lot of this has actually changed since I wrote it, and over the years, so don't chase special anomalies. They're T10s. They're not worth it for an alpha. Don't be afraid to scout out a special anomaly in a pod or shuttle. It's important to check special anomalies before going in. You okay? Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Special anomalies like Inquisitors, Dead Spaces, and so on are a treat, and the most sought after bounties and drops may be found in them. You could farm them for a chance to spawn one. Why wait then? Why wait for them when you can go looking to steal the fruits of some other rat farmer's labor? Base Nectar. The best ISK for time invested comes from killing bases. They are not easy. They are not meant to be. Base busting doesn't need to go all the way to be worth the effort. The first couple of waves won't spawn elites, which makes them ideal for gathering ISK. When the big bads show up, they have a chance to drop green loot. Bases don't drop industrial modules, but the lack is a small price to pay for consistency. You wanna come back? Or no? Okay. Hello, fan. Still, killing the same T4 or T5 every other day or so is a more acceptable proposition than repeatedly grinding the system's suckers down like normal anomalies allow. The loot is worth more than the bounties in the smaller bases. A T4 gives about 1 million ISK straight, but the gear dropped can be sold for triple that or more with finagling. It ain't easy. You can lose ISK fighting T4 bases with poor damage application. The repair costs on a battlecruiser's structure will outweigh the bounties gained killing the little pirates. Every level of difficulty has such nuances. This can be avoided by building specifically to take on smaller enemies, but your damage per second will be lesser against bigger targets. DPS means less without application. As an alpha, T4 through T6 bases make for my vacations from the mines. I use each base as a kind of proving grounds for the oddball fittings the ships I build get stuck with. When I want to take a base down, I follow the principle of escalating force. I like to base bust with a frigate for the appetizer, a destroyer serves for the main course, cruisers end up get flown for dessert. Frigates are best used for preparing the battlefield. They can drop bookmarks or boxes and clean out the first wave or two without much difficulty. Their increased exposure time is nice for gauging how rowdy the local players are, and their increased survivability makes it so that should some action pop up, hopping to a safe to see how the whale responds is quite satisfying. It's important to give yourself a wide berth between the central signal and your safe bookmark. 300 kilometers is a good rule of thumb. Base busting in a destroyer is intense. Skirmish and harass from a distance, or isolate and kill the small fry, as Queen and Country intended, to avoid being swarmed. Either use dual propulsion or an afterburner and good defenses to help mitigate enemy scrams and webs. Speed is life and death. Go fast or be gone fast. Warp in and out to maneuver the enemy, and don't be afraid to save elites for last. Take care to use range to your advantage. Bigger ships can more safely handle elites, but will struggle more with the swarm. If my decies can't handle a situation, calling in the bigger guns usually does the trick. This minimizes the more expensive ship's exposure to hunters while giving them a chance to stretch their wings. With more enemies come more potential loot drops. Equipping a navy from only the wreckage is all profit. It's the slow road, but it's not like the destination is anything other than turning the game off to re-engage with life as we know it. Go kill some bases. If you can kill them in hostile territory, all the better. Not like the locals were using them. Bases are trickier than farming anomalies, but offer better short-term reward as a result. Applications to third party. If you were lucky enough to get a notification that your area has been scanned by a red scanner, congrats, you have a visitor. When killing pirates, it's important to look juicy, but not to get dumb about it. Sitting at the signal for the anomaly is a good way to get the incoming new friend's hug of death as fast as possible. If you're fishing or acting like a bait for nearby friends, then by all means, let the jokes about face-sitting fly. Otherwise, do your fighting with enough breathing room between you and Orien that there's at least the opportunity to slip out of the hunter's grasp. This is why I love destroyers. Their survivability makes them ideal, and their damage output is delightfully low compared to cruisers. They're basically value per cost. They're better value per cost than frigates. Every destroyer replaces itself after at most a couple dozen runs, but no two are exactly alike. I have Armor Talwars and Thrasher 2s tailor-made for crossing swords with Tech 7 challenges. On the flip side, my patrol boat variants go hunting for anything but trouble and are built for paying the bills with rocks and rare goods left unattended by wealthier whales. There are options all day. I offer myself no answers, only challenges. Understated answers to how I might spend my free time come naturally as a result. I'm split over the Algos, or the synergistic Synesis. The rosy rowdy Rifter and the noble Tristan clash for my attention, and each win on the regular. Shuttles are more valuable to me than battleships. If that sounds insane, so be it. Love is stupid. I name my ships and ask them to die. Most players skip the first step and think they've done something better. They might be right. Regardless of the composition your fleet takes shape from, you will find meaning where you give it. That meaning will be multiplied if you pay attention. The attacker always has the advantage. In attacking rats, you are granting hunters an implicit advantage as they can third-party you and attack in kind. Make the losses hurt. Invite them. The victories will feel better as a result. Battle buddies. Once you're comfortably able to lose ships, it's time to make friends. Find a place with a few folks in local chat, visible in the lower left corner of your screen. Say hi. A favorite Eve-ism of mine is the old 07 salute. How are you is a better way to show you care than most others. If you're ready to share space with someone, either visit or let them know where you are. Make a bookmark. Share it on local chat. Hopefully, whoever shows up is friendly or at least decidedly infuriating. That's if anyone shows up at all. Some of the nicest people you'll ever know in-game will try to kill you. If they notice you're relatively poor, they might even offer to give you your stuff back. They want prey, but a friendly encounter will do. If they're corporation-oriented, they might even try recruiting. Think of it as a compliment, more than a job offer. Most corporations want workers to call friends rather than friends to work with. Some Omegas need people to show status to. Alphas do not, but they're necessary for socializing. Be nice to your fellow humans. You never know when the last time you see someone will be. You also never know who will become a staple in your rotation of loved ones. A certain Yeti, for example, has made the darkness of space far brighter than I think he realizes. Crazy Canadian, you too, you poutine-pounding puck-chucker. Bradrick, Gromire, Taylor Rick, Rambo, all of you are the best. There are too many to list, and many more I missed. Thank you. You get out what you put in. Like most special anomalies might not be accessible opportunities for an alpha, but Omegas can hit them. They will sell what they don't need, which is pretty much everything in there. Don't be surprised if most real-life folks have a hard time getting behind your digital habit compared to more visceral options. Greens are good, both in real life and in space, if you catch my drift. Better yet, team up with strangers and be surprised by each other's effectiveness. Support players carry teams by enabling them. Mining is how I get most of my writing done, but there is rarely a better way to talk to someone than to offer the excuse of some low-attention activity, like cooking, cleaning, or killing pixels. We are smoky mirrors reflecting off of one another in kaleidoscoping shades of darkness and light. Some you may polish, Some you will smudge. Each moment is merely a reflection within the whole glass menagerie. If you're afraid to ask a stranger to dance, you probably should anyway. You're gonna die eventually. Do it early, and do it often by changing. At least have fun along the way. Special missions. The news doesn't change often in New Eden. It's not good or bad, just consistently inconsistent. Alphas only have access to news missions on advanced and lower difficulties. One of the most common recommendations for new players is to run missions. It's good advice, but tends to lead an over-reliance on ISK to become an expectation in those who take it to heart. Missions offer rewards that are better than normal anomalies, but worse than bases in the short term. In the long term, the loot boxes granted as rewards for completing each story's bingo card list of associated story missions is better left to farmers with more consistently efficient ships, but with good routing it could be profitable. For freedom level story missions, so for freedom is the name of the mission, level story mission items are easier to buy than to earn. Each faction has their own T7 challenge to chase. Most of the goods offered by the supply chest earned at the end are more easily found by busting bases or tracking opportunities in the wild, but the money is fine. The mission system is how the developers subsidize specific activities. They will pay you to exit your station, fly a couple of systems over, and take a look at the locals. They will pay far better than market value for spread crop ores and Veldspar. The devs will give you your own private fights to compete for decent ISK on top of the bounties. To complete for decent ISK on top of the bounties. The loot drops are far more sparse in those private fights. They rarely happen. And hunters can still come visit. If you want what everyone gets, do what everyone does. Most folks do missions. Alphas no longer get access to dormant realms. Faction missions are similar, but are 3/5 T10 fights. The other 2/5 can be accomplished by an alpha, but it's a long road to the top if you want to rock and roll. Blah. Mortal combat. But man is not made for defeat. A man can be destroyed, but not defeated. Ernest the Hemingway. When he said war was a racket, Smedley Butler was more correct than he could have known. The profits from destruction come strictly from good vibes pulled from evil actions. To kill is to die. People are family. Body parts we cannot feel. The dark arts presented here can be abused more easily than most in this book. Alpha PvP is necessarily insurgent in nature, and as a result, not the sort of knowledge most would find socially acceptable. Ironically enough, it relies entirely on getting out and being sociable. Go figure. Kitchen magic is best magic. You're more likely to get a fair fight scrapping with friends than out in the wild. Plenty want to be hunters. Fewer want to be prey. Reality has these rates swapped in the animal kingdom for a reason. Be the change you want to see in the galaxy, or at the very least, subsidize it. The goal of most PvP is to make the combat a straight stat show. Fair fights are for suckers. Seal clubbing is a natural byproduct of this mentality. But when combat effectiveness is so costly, the risk of having a fight turn is too great to leave any lone venture unperforated. Who will think of this Veldspar? There is a certain point where hunters receive diminishing returns for what they've paid for. To compete with a single big whale would require a whole mess of alphas devoted to the cause. Still, it's not unheard of. Remember, one big ship is not nearly as ISK effective as a mountain of little ships, totaling up the same cost if the little guys know not to line up and run directly into the gunfire. That was hot, thing. That was dope. That was majestic. This cat is magnificent. Hold on. Look at that fang. Look at him. Glorious. Alright, where was I? Remember, yeah. Whole bunch of little dudes can kill a big guy, right? Which wins the fight? A lone battleship worth the better part of a billion ISK, or the 50 plus destroyers that same billion could have bought? Even if the damage per second is on the side of the big boy, the question of application is so much more in favor of the little wolves that the monster will be pulled down, even if he takes the better part of the pack in the process. Resistances over 80% are enough to hang, but getting there is tough. For obvious reasons, there are not gangs of alphas out there. Yet. They wouldn't stay alphas for long. As for individual hunters, alpha DPS caps out at around 1,000 without serious time investment. The minimum DPS professional hunters aim for in their cruisers is 1,500, leaning towards 2,000. Alphas will be outgunned in any fight with someone who dropped the bones needed to build a battler. Omega life is easier. Omega gangs are naturally stronger. Still, alphas can serve. Scouts and tackle are welcome in any fleet with sense. Stealth bombers can punch above their weight class even without access to special bombard modes. Sharing intelligence enables teams to better prioritize. The better part of the many activities that exist in New Eden can be done merely by being in the right place within 10 kilometers, at the right time when it's too dangerous for someone else. Omegas, please feed your local alphas. Let them take your loot, or at least let them take a swing at sniping it out from under you. Think of it like restocking a forest with game. Happy hunting. Alphas can hunt alphas. Call your dead mother, ask her when she died. War Isn't Murder by Jesse Wells. That way lies madness. Don't. You've so much to live for. Why? How could you? Cannibalism for fun is so naughty. This is how seal clubbers are born. There is no honor in killing bunnies. The thrill of the chase is the point. However, bunny on bunny violence is how more bunnies get made. If you really want to mess with the heads of other alphas, catch and release. This isn't in the book, but Gromeyer did this recently with this whole trivia thing, and the guy came back for more, which is silly. He got popped the second time, but the first catch and release, peak. That was magnificent. Loved it. Anyway. Red scanners are not exactly needed, but they save so much time and effort that they may as well be for most. Creamy's hunting log on YouTube is long dead, but there are no better guides out there for learning how to hunt with or without a red scanner. There are tons of others out there showing highlight reels. Creamy showed the how for those willing to read, but who reads these days? You need at least 3 points of warp destabilization to pin down most miners, often more. 2 scramblers will do the trick, or a disruptor and a scram if you're down to mix it up. Radders and small craft are more naturally vulnerable to getting tackled and tickled, long points to the front. Unfortunately, for alpha hunters, big radders on meta are usually stabilized, which makes them vulnerable to disruption fields. Fortunately for the radders, bubbles are limited to Omega tech. Fighting makes little sense without a chance of both success and failure. Seal clubbing has no honor, but is necessary for adding orders to the market. It is not the killer's fault the immortal invested so heavily in their vessel. It's not the victim's fault the killer hunts. Act with interest and improvement more than a desire for success, and failure becomes a sign of the way ahead more than a tragedy to be endured. To practice hunting, start cheap and work your way up following the basic, To practice hunting, start cheap and work your way up following the principle of escalation of force. The most basic frigates are basically open and fly affairs. Take your bog standard basic executioner. Stock, it comes with civilian grade gear and an empty mid slot. If you need a ship, any ship, there are none easier to hop in and go than them. Go steal gold teeth and watches from major battles, like the survivor you are. Slap a mid-slot onto one of those basic frigs and go try to spot people. It's going to be hard. Experiment. Find new and interesting ways to get blown up. Once you learn how to find trouble and make messes, you can start trying to clean up. The closest low sec to Jita is Ignoitin. If you think it would be prime real estate, it's usually empty. Folks are afraid. The irony is, people are usually just passing through. Usually. When you're ready to invite chaos, consider posting up there. Ignoitin is spelled Ignoitton, by the way, and it's a nice little low-sec island. It's super competitively close to Jita. You can literally just farm there. Folks will potentially come mess with you, but because it's so close, it's rare. It's boring. Until it isn't. Where was I? Of all the most boring interactions possible, seal clubbing is the worst. No threat means no fear. The possibility of loss is what makes victory worth anything at all. This is why flying cheap ships is brilliant. If you can kill as a baby seal, in any situation you'll be both cuddly and dangerous. Once you've burned a few hours and bought some stories, consider the sections on PvE tactics. How would you best ruin the day of each approach? For ranged ships, close the gap with a covert operations craft. For ranged ships, closing the gap with a covert operations craft takes all of the fight out of them. For a more dynamic entry when crashing the party, use stable signals to gap close. Nothing takes the vinegar out of a sniper faster than your boot landing on their smile. Jump to the nearest stationary object and move in from there. Better yet, if there's an object on the opposite side of the target, you can estimate how far your objective is from the jump point and land in scrambling distance. For tanky vessels, attack their capacitors. It takes energy to actively defend, and tiring out the beefcake will have it doing a burger impression before long, assuming you can keep them in one place. Tanks tend to stab harder than their peers because getting the FO is the difference between KO and OK. For mid-range approaches and glass cannons, you'll have your work cut out for you. Taking the wind out of their sails is step 1. Managing their superior application is step 2. They're not as squishy as range vessels. They're not as easily rassled as grippy sock grappler types. Fly what you want to fight to learn how to counter the... Fly what you want to learn... Fly what you want to fight to learn how to counter their answers. Take a stab at a good stabber and see how silly things can get. Punching down on the climb to the top doesn't move you up the mountain any. In fact, it's liable to pull you down a bit as you bite off more than you can masticate. Do it anyway. Falling lessons are the first step in any martial art, to include interstellar warfare. Alright. I have done the deed. It's been an hour. Next section is going to be about OODA loops, and here's where I actually start talking about... No, okay, not actually. Here's a brief... It's a brief... Okay, I love this essay. My friend Chaos wanted me to talk about OODA loops. He, recommended it as a topic. And I like them as a teaching tool, but they're really not realistic. They're not useful outside of the classroom. And even then, they establish bad patterns of behavior, because fighting and flying and performing, the less you think and the more you practice so that you can think less, the better you will be at it. OODA loops. Until we become what we've been fighting all along. Bully by Dury. The music video on that one is hilarious. It's amazing. It's really good. OODA stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act. Some poser named Johnny 42nd Boyd coined the term. Alas, the nickname came from his prowess as an instructor pilot and not as a drinker. Killing a 40 in a second gets better trim, if not the floor. Military aviators took a liking to OODA mostly because they don't need to use their whole hand to count out the letters. Think of OODA like dance steps for your brain. In theory, it's good practice. In practice, it's just a theory. Boyd believed the person who looped through OODA faster killed harder. Observe the situation, register advantages and disadvantages as they stand, convert experience to understanding on a subconscious level to accelerate this step. Orient yourself to the position of best decisive advantage. In aviation, this usually meant getting behind the target. Generally, wherever your opponent would want to be is a good place to start trying to be. Decide what to do. This step is a trap. Analysis paralysis will get you killed in a fight. Don't think, just do what you practiced. Wait, you haven't practiced? When you're fighting, you're practicing. When you're licking your wounds, you get to judge the decisions made in the heart of a fight. Mix those up at your peril. Act. Boyd did that a lot. He was no Robin, free rides, olds. Still, Johnny Boyd was smart, and this framework is extremely useful in the classroom. Still, the truth doesn't need to shout to be believed. Empty barrels make a lot of noise. The folks who are actually good at killing others don't advertise their methods. Silent professionalism is far more effective than even the most rudimentary plan. Come up with a game plan before hunting. Learn what works by hunting. Think about what kinds of targets you want to observe and from what position. Do you want cruiser bruisers or frigate-fired fricassee? Are you looking for systems with a couple of locals in chat, or are you hunting in the wild dark of Null? Got a thing for miners? Maybe you'd make a better politician in that case. Orient to get the best position of your chosen target. If they shoot ranged, get in close. If they're dangerous up close, try it and tickle the edges of their webs and weapons. As you practice, you will learn what feels well and how well those feelings work. Decide to commit to the plan or to adapt. Always have an exit strategy, even if it is just to approach 2 kilometers and unleash hell. Having your pod exit the spacecraft is a strategy. Whatever you do, commit to it. Don't half-ass 2 things when you can whole-ass 1. Act like you know what you're doing, while 100% knowing that you have no idea, and eventually you'll learn to turn ambition into action. If all else fails, breathe. Pay attention to the sensations within and the scenario without. Act without thought. Think about those actions after the fact and be kind to yourself as you visit cruelty on other pieces in this silly little game about spreadsheets and spaceships. Be silent. Be professional. Ask questions if you actually want answers, not just to fill the air with empty noise or stroke your own ego. Whatever you do, don't go writing a book now, you hear? And that'll do for this round. Next time we'll pick up with faction war games. This is one of my favorite rants. I talk about it all the time. And I think I've talked enough for now, so bye!